Good evening and welcome. You're watching Primetime News on TV1, bringing you the news. I'm Tarushi Kumar Singha. Let's start off the bulletin by looking at your headlines this evening.
Will an island-wide lockdown be imposed? Decisions related to COVID-19 are made collectively. A statement from the Army commander. Upgrade PCR capacity to 100,000. A request from nursing officials. Teacher and principals trade unions address letter to the United Nations. Warnings issued to continue struggle if demands are not resolved.
In your lead story this evening, authorities confirmed 111 COVID-19 deaths for Sunday, the 8th of August 2021, marking a grim milestone in the country's battle against the pandemic. Against a backdrop where a sharp uptick in COVID-19 cases have been reported from the country, what steps will the government take in the future and what measures have they already taken to contain this situation? This is an in-depth look into the matter.
Will there be another lockdown?
ජනාධිපතිතුමාගෙන් සෞඛ්‍ය අධිකාරිතුමා ඉල්ලීමක් කළා තියෙනවාද ලොක්ඩවුන් එකට යා යුතුයි කියලා. ඒක අපේ විකල්ප ගොඩේ.
That is one constant factor included in our alternate plans. Many sectors have to come to an agreement to reach this decision. This is not something we can individually achieve. We have to hold discussions and make a decision. 1,928 COVID-19 cases were confirmed today, the 9th of August 2021, raising the total caseload in the country to 331,922. 2,161 COVID-19 patients recovered today. The total number of deaths in Sri Lanka rose to 5,222.
What stance do trade unions bear on the spread of COVID-19?
When around 1,100 patients were being discovered, the rate of PCR tests stood at around 16,000 to 18,000. When in excess of 3,000 COVID-19 cases are being reported, roughly 22,000 to 23,000 PCR and rapid antigen tests are being done. Certain personnel in the government, healthcare sector and the Ministry of Health are of the stance that the true number of patients should not be detected. If 50,000 PCR tests are conducted, the 3,000 figure will rise to 6,000. The government has no intention to do that. Senior citizens above the age of 60 who lose their life are people who have not been vaccinated. Others have only been given the first dose. The incumbent government must be culpable for it. Even when calls have been made for the government to prioritize senior citizens above the age of 60, in keeping with the WHO's guidelines, they have vaccinated people between 30 and 60 for their political will. Vaccinating those above 60 years has been delayed.
Will the risk of contracting the virus reduce once you are vaccinated?
You
will not be immunized just because you receive the vaccine. Even after receiving the second dose of the vaccine, it will take about 2 weeks to achieve full immunity. 96% of the population above the age of 30 have received the first dose of any vaccine. 25% of people have received both doses. Within this week, the 96% who have received the first dose of the vaccine must receive the second dose. The first dose has been administered to only 10 million out of the total population. Therefore, everyone has not been fully immunized. It will at least be mid-September when we achieve full immunization. There are about 40,000 people above the age of 60 in Colombo who have not received the vaccine due to the spread of false rumors.
A special program to vaccinate residents of Colombo who have not yet received the first dose of any vaccine is being conducted by Sri Lanka Police at the Sugatadasa Indoor Stadium in Colombo. Sri Lanka Police have taken steps to search the people who have not yet vaccinated and provide transport to them if necessary to receive the vaccine. The vaccination centre operated by the Sri Lanka Army at the Vihara Mahadevi Open Air Theatre is open for 24 hours. The second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine and the first and the second dose of the Chinese Sinopharm vaccine is being administered to people at the centre. The second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine and both the doses of the Sinopharm vaccine is being administered at the Diyatha Uyana in Battaramulla from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. COVID-19 vaccines were administered to citizens at 383 locations situated across the country.
Will Sri Lanka receive more vaccines in the future?
100,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine manufactured in the United States arrived in the country this morning. The doses are to be administered to the people in the coming few days.
We are to receive 15,000 doses of the Russian Sputnik vaccine within this week. Also, we have reached an agreement with the Chinese government to bring down 10 million more Sinopharm vaccines to Sri Lanka by September. The importation process was slightly hampered by the recent fears raised in China, but that is being dealt with at the moment. In addition to that, 100,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine will be brought down to the country every week till December. In the end, we will bring down a total of 18 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine.
Is it safe to stop wearing masks after you receive both doses of the vaccine?
Most people will have the virus in their throat if you carry out tests. If you stop wearing masks without the entire nation being vaccinated, people around you can contract the virus. This virus changes its protein pattern twice every month. You might not contract the virus, but new variants of the virus might be created with the virus being active in the community. That is how variants such as Delta, Beta and Gamma have been developed. Some experts have pointed out if a variant is developed that could withstand the antibodies scientists have created, we will have to start the vaccination cycle from scratch.
The Army Commander's request.
The populace needs to ensure their safety. The people must fulfill their responsibility. We cannot impose regulations over everything. We are implementing the best possible method for the country. Interprovincial restrictions are still in effect. Interprovincial travel is only allowed for official purposes. Do not misuse it. Obtain the vaccine without delay.
අග්‍රාමාත්‍යවරයා රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහතා දැඩි චෝදනාවක් එල්ල කළා ඔබතුමා ප්‍රධානත්වයෙන් දරන කොවිඩ් මර්ධන ජනාධිපති විශේෂ කාර්ය සාධක බලකායට. ඔවුන් සඳහන් කළා මේක නීති විරෝධී බලකායක්. මේ වෙන විට සිදුව ඇති මරණ සම්බන්ධ මේ බලකාය වග කියන්න ඕනේ. මේක මේ වහම විසුරන්න ඕනේ කියලා දැඩි චෝදනා එල්ල කරා. සම්බන්ධව ඔබතුමා මොකද කියන්නේ?
ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ ජනතාව
All of Sri Lanka's citizens have lauded the vaccination drive conducted by the authorities led by the army. Against such a backdrop, you ask me of my opinion over a single person's criticism over it. As the Chief of Defence Staff and the Army Commander, it is my responsibility to answer. What he should know before criticising the vaccination drive conducted by health officials and the Army is that he too obtained his vaccine from the Army Hospital in Narahempita, where our vaccination centre is set up. If he had the requirement of obtaining his vaccine from us and then claims the vaccination drive is wrong, the people of the country must decide what is right and wrong. His Excellency the President is the head of the task force. All ministers in charge of health are part of this task force. Moreover, several more cabinet ministers are members of this task force. The task force is also made up of the Secretary to the Ministry of Health, DG of Health Services, commanders of the 3 armed forces, IGP and specialist doctors. The decisions are not made solely either by the President or us at the National Operations Centre. Of course, there can be criticism over such matters, but the reality is these are collective decisions.
තනියෙන් ගන්න තීරණ නෙමේ. ඉතින් ඒකින්ද මෙවැනි කාරණා සම්බන්ධයෙන් විවිධ විවේචන ඇති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් ඇත්ත කතාව මේ සියලුම එකතු කට්ටිය එකතු වෙලා ගන්න තීරණ තමයි මේ ගන්න ලබන්නේ.
The Army Commander expressed these views at an event to donate 10,000 kilograms of copra prepared by the Army to the Temple of Tooth in the lead up to the Asala Mahapirhara.
Have hospitals exceeded their capacity?
Based on information provided by the Ministry of Health, only 1,200 beds out of the total beds reserved for COVID-19 patients are currently vacant. Deputy Director General of Health Services Dr. Hemanta Herat said by yesterday 32,762 beds out of a total of 33,962 reserved for COVID-19 patients have been occupied. The number of patients in ICUs has risen to 89.
අපිට ඊළඟ විකල්පය වන්නේ
Our next alternative will be to direct facilities reserved to treat other patients for the treatment of COVID-19 patients. This should be done with great care because the lives of other patients' lives will be lost if it is mismanaged. We would advise against believing that the health authorities would treat any number of patients at hospitals.
අපි ඒකත් එවැනි තත්වයකට ගෙනියන එකත් පිළිගන්නේ නැහැ.
ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම කියනවා නම් මම හිතන්නේ මේ සතිය තුල
All hospitals in the country will be converted to hospitals which facilitate COVID-19 patients, so you can admit yourself to the closest hospital. One could question whether he or she would spread the virus when traveling to the hospital. If you believe contracting this virus would be fatal, you must prioritize your health and admit yourself to the hospital.
කෙනෙකුට බෝ වෙනවට වඩා වැදගත් දේ මේ වෙලාවේ ඔබ කොහොම හරි රෝහලට යන්න.
Are infected patients being treated at home?
Authorities have commenced home-based treatment for COVID-19 patients who are asymptomatic or show minor symptoms. The MOH of a relevant area will be responsible for triaging of patients between the ages of 2 and 65 who test positive for the virus based on either rapid antigen or a PCR test. Once the MOH decides to treat the patient at home, his or her details will be registered on the patient's home isolation and management system. The patients will then be monitored once a day or several times a day by a medical team specifically trained to treat COVID-19 through a call center which can be reached through the hotline 1390. The 1390 call center is currently functioning under the supervision of the Deputy Director General of Health Services.
එහෙනම් වගේ මහත්යව අපි අර නිවසේ සිට ප්‍රතිකාර කරන ඒ වැඩසටහන ඇතුළත් කරනවා. එතකොට ඒකෙන් ඔයාව අධීක්ෂණයට අත් කරයි පූර්ණ වෛද්‍ය අධීක්ෂණය යටතේ තමයි ඔයගොල්ලෝ මහත්යව තියන්නේ.
දැඩි අවදානන් සහිත කිසිම කෙනෙක්
We do not intend to treat any high-risk COVID-19 patient at home, no matter what facilities are available at home. If a person is showing severe symptoms, we will admit them to hospital. If attempts are made to misuse this system and treat high-risk patients at home, it could even lead to the death of that patient.
නිවසේම රැක බලා ගැනීමට උත්සාහ කළොත් මං හිතනවා නිවසේදී මරණ වීම යම් ප්‍රමාණයකට වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
A flight carrying 44 Russian nationals arrived at the Bandaranaike International Airport last morning.
Former Sri Lankan ambassador to Russia, Udayanga Veeratunga, posting on Facebook said the flight had arrived in the country at around 6:10 a.m. from Moscow based on the Russian tourist bubble concept. The Facebook post further notes that the government is ready to revive the tourism industry of the country in the face of a global pandemic. Udayanga Veeratunga in his Facebook post had said that the Minister of Finance Basil Rajapaksa held discussions with officials attached to the tourism sector, and it has been discussed that steps must be taken to simplify the rules, regulations and the process of issuance of visas to arrive in Sri Lanka. A former Sri Lankan ambassador to Russia, Udayanga Veeratunga, brought down Ukraine nationals to the country in the past, and all those incidents were subject to massive criticism by various factions. These are very critical times. The situation in Russia is not all right as of yet. The government must prioritize the safety of the people at times like this instead of looking for ways to raise revenue through tourism. Who is behind the decision to allow tourists into the country? According to sources, none of these tourists were vaccinated. Who was the person that approved these individuals who do not possess any proof of being vaccinated to enter the country? I agree. Tourism in Sri Lanka must be boosted, but we have time for that. We think that the decision to allow tourists into the country at a time like this is unwise. All of us are aware of the situation in the country as of now. We are facing very crucial times. This is the worst situation our country has ever faced. And unfortunately, the Delta variant of the virus seems to be spreading at a faster pace than the vaccination drive in the country. According to remarks expressed by those who are more aware of the severity of this virus, especially those with medical expertise, I personally think the best option is to shut down the country. While the government is taking steps to operate the country, they are also trying to curb the spread of the virus and provide relief to the people.
The teachers' principals' salary anomalies have not been solved yet. The Ceylon Teachers Service Union today said that they will not suspend their demonstrations until a fair solution to their struggles is provided.
The Joint Teachers Service Union submitted a complaint to the United Nations office in Sri Lanka this morning.
We are from teachers I'll deliver this note to their resident coordinator for the United Nations. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for
Have a good day.
The United National Party signed the International Teachers Charter via UNESCO in Paris in 1966. According to this charter signed by the Sri Lankan government, they are liable to systematically provide the teachers with their salaries, a salary that is enough to pay for their necessities and is socially acceptable. We have provided this letter to the United Nations office in Sri Lanka, highlighting the need to abolish salary anomalies.
ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීමට අදාළ බලපෑමක් කිරීම සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපි එක්සත් ජාතීන්ගේ සංවිධානයට ලියුම ලබා දීලා තියෙන්නේ. අපි හෙට දවසේ
A collective of all trade unions in the country, including those in the government sector, semi-government sector and private sector, will engage in discussions tomorrow to contribute their support towards the problem that we are facing. Therefore, we hope to take necessary steps to solve this problem.
ඔවුන් සමග ඉදිරි ක්‍රියාමාර්ගවලට යන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
The Mathura District Secretary of the Ceylon Teachers Service Union, Lal Premanath, and Sarojini Paulraj of the Women for Rights Movement were arrested today by the Mathura police and were released on bail later on. They were arrested for allegedly violating quarantine regulations while attending a teachers' principals protest staged in Mathura on the 20th of last month. They were summoned before the Crime Investigation Unit of the Mathura Police Headquarters around 10 this morning and were arrested there and interrogated for almost 3 hours. They were released on bail and were asked to appear before the Mathura Magistrates Court on the 16th.
ආණ්ඩුව බරපතල ආකාරයෙන් මර්ධනයක් දියත් කරමින් ඉන්නවා මේ.
The government is suppressing the struggle launched by the teachers. The government is opting to suppress the teachers through police. A teacher called Ranjit Munasinghe, who failed to wear a mask for 10 seconds while protesting in Mathura, has been summoned to appear before the court. Even today, people who have been protesting in Mathura have been asked to come to the police to record statements. When the convener of the Inter-University Students' Federation, Vasanta Mudalige, was taken away, one of the police officers was not wearing a mask. More than 25 people who engaged in a protest in Kandy on the 11th of last month have been asked to come to courts. Is it right to suppress teachers like this? We will not stop our struggle merely because of these threats.
මේ අරගලේ නවත්තන්න බෑ.
දැන් අපි එක වෘත්තීය ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක්.
Now that we have withdrawn one trade union action, the Kandy Additional Magistrates Court has issued notices to me and 24 of my fellow activists who are involved in this struggle to appear in court on the 11th. One thing is clear, and that is the government is recalling us to the battle. The government is following this conniving strategy. We would like to say that this is a cunning political ploy to cover up the problem and a shameless act to send notices like this. They are speaking of a teachers' cluster. The government says we are inviting COVID-19, but they cannot remember that Udanga Veeratunga and his group welcomed the Delta cluster with much pomp and pageantry at the Hambantota airport. The government that rules without a proper plan imported corona and distributed corona. Today, instead of bringing down the vaccines on time and getting the medicine on time, they have distributed a herbal tonic, dumped pots to rivers, played nonsense and distorted the minds of the people. Now they are trying to vaccinate the public by force. They are pointing fingers at the teachers. Such a catastrophe would not have happened if the health authorities were given the opportunity to do the needful and if the vaccines were brought down on time. If we fear the demon, we won't build houses in a graveyard. It is after understanding the devil that we took to the streets without fear.
අපි යකා ගැන හොඳට දැනගෙන තමයි බය නැතුව පාරට බැස්සේ.
මේක කාලෝචිතද මේකද සුදුසු වෙලාව මම අපේ
Is this the right time to do this? I would like to ask the teachers to direct this question to their conscience. The cabinet is of the view that the best course of action to find a solution to this problem is through the budget while considering the prevailing economic situation in the country. The appropriation bill will be presented in just 3 months. We hope to reopen schools during the first week of September while taking the necessary steps and adhering to health guidelines. However, given the current state of the country, it is uncertain if the schools can be reopened during the last week of August or the first week of September.
අගෝස්තු අවසානයේ සෙප්තැම්බර් මුල් සතියේ කරන්න පුළුවන් වේද කියන එක අවිනිශ්චිතයි.
When the teachers and principals took to the streets demanding their salary anomaly issue to be resolved, the Inter-University Students' Union, university lecturers and civil activists launched a struggle urging the authorities to withdraw the Kotalawala University Bill. A group of student activists engaged in a protest opposite the University of Sri Jayawardenepura today, demanding the release of several other student activists who were arrested and kept in remand custody for engaging in a protest. Our struggle cannot be stopped by threatening us or suppressing us. The same threats were made against us when we tried to defeat SITEM, but our struggle ended with the end of SITEM. We would like to remind the government, no matter what steps you will take to suppress our endeavours, we will only stop when the KDU bill is withdrawn by the government. A protest organised by the Inter-University Students' Union was held opposite the George E. De Silva Park in Kandy today. What we see is that the government is delaying and bringing more amendments to this, to pass this, when the COVID-19 situation in the country is at a dire strait. That is the plan of this government. It is against that we launched this struggle in the first place.
While various protests were staged across the country based on various issues, an unusual demonstration was staged in Mahawela today.
In compliance with COVID-19 health guidelines, mannequins were used in this demonstration. The protest was staged in the Mahawela town in the Puttlam district, claiming that residents in the area have not been provided with adequate COVID-19 vaccines. Over 75% of the residents in every other district have been vaccinated against COVID-19. However, even the population above the age of 60 in the Puttlam district has not been vaccinated. Do not leave the public in such a risky situation. It is regrettable that the authorities have not looked into this as of yet. When inquired, the Puttlam District Deputy Director of Health Services, Dr. Dinusha Fernandez, said the Puttlam district has received nearly 300,000 COVID-19 jabs so far.
Mahabodhi Society of India conducted Sri Lanka India Ashirvad Puja at the sacred Mulagandhakuti Vihara in Saranath. These special prayers today in India gain particular significance as they also mark the first anniversary of assumption of office by Prime Minister His Excellency Mahinda Rajapaksa in his current term.
Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa, the Prime Minister of...
The sacred event was held for the health and well-being of people of Sri Lanka, particularly in view of the current situation in the country. Prayers were also offered for the continued strong bilateral partnership between India and Sri Lanka. Various temples and offices associated with the society spread across India, such as Bodh Gaya, Lumbini, Kolkata and Lucknow, also took part in these prayers online. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and High Commissioner of India, Gopal Bagle, attended these special prayers virtually. A special offering was made to Lord Venkateshwara at Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam for Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and for the people of Sri Lanka.
The historic Rambakanoya, which is a national heritage, figured heavily in the recent past over a matter of severe environmental destruction. However, it has now come into the limelight once more following the discovery of a certain algae in the water of the Rambakanoya reservoir.
The water flowing from the Rambakanoya is utilized for both irrigation and domestic purposes. However, our cameras captured how the once pristine waters of this invaluable reservoir have now discolored due to an algae in the water. The regional manager of the National Water Supply and Drainage Board elaborated on the cause of this discoloration.
An enrichment of algae occurs when nitrate and phosphate is mixed with water. This has happened due to such a situation. This could occur due to animal feces mixing with the water and also the mixing of chemical products. A reduction in the filtration of water also has been noticed. We believe this can be resolved in a few days.
Newsfirst constantly revealed instances of environmental destruction and crops being cultivated in the area, compounding the woes of many area residents, including those in the Pollebadda and Nillamba villages. Isn't deforestation and application of various chemicals for cultivations, including maize, a major reason for the current damage caused to the Rambakanoya reservoir? When Newsfirst visited this area earlier this year, our cameras captured the waters of the eye-catching Rambakanoya reservoir in this manner.
And up next is Crime Watch.
The Vaunia Divisional Crime Investigation Unit has been able to find the root cause of a double murder that took place in 2015. Parameshwaran Sajintika and her 6-month-old infant were considered to be missing since 2015. The family members continue to raise suspicions about the incident and the police arrested Sajintika's lover. After continuous interrogation, the suspect has confessed to killing Sajintika and her child by strangling after taking them to a house in Mururganur, Vaunia. The suspect has further confessed that the body was set on fire and that he sprinkled sugar on the burning remains. The suspect had revealed that the infant also died as a result of the altercation between him and his lover, Sajintika. He has said that he also threw the baby in the same fire. The suspect has been arrested after police broadened their investigations when Sajintika's mobile number became active in Colombo. Based on the confession, the remains of the bodies of Sajintika and her baby were exhumed yesterday from a land behind a house in Vaunia. The suspect had lived in Colombo, Norelia, as well as travelled overseas during the past 6 years. He was remanded until the 16th of this month.
A suspect who was taken to the Colombo Magistrates Court today attempted to escape from an upper floor.
The incident was recorded on the camera of a Newsfirst reporter who was present at the location. The suspect who attempted to escape was later arrested by the police. He was a suspect who was brought to court in connection with a drug case.
Now, since the beginning of this year, Central Bank of Sri Lanka's stock of treasury holdings has grown by 60%, which translates to money printing of more than 400 billion rupees.
In the wake of high liquidity, Sri Lanka's private credit surged by 83 billion rupees in June 2021. Credit to government surged 170 billion rupees, of which 124 billion rupees was printed. Sri Lanka's private credit in the first 6 months of the year was 414 billion rupees, up from 372 billion rupees a year earlier. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka is expecting private credit of around 800 billion rupees in 2021. Credit to state enterprises also grew 19.4 billion rupees.